Recording in progress.
Hey, Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Good to have everybody on. And we are going to begin. It's a sad day. Let's face it, it's a sad day. We have a lot of things going on in our world, and what's happening in Ukraine is really, really horrible. So we're going to try to feel a little bit more centered. Sorry, Shaya, I forgot to make him a co-host. Shaya is doing our tech tonight. There you go. Sorry about that, Shaya. So we're going to begin with Hine Matov, how good it is to be together, because it is wonderful to be together, despite what's going on out there. And so Elliot is going to lead us in Hine Matov.
הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב, הנה מה טוב, לה 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 לה. הנה מה טוב, הנה מה טוב, לה 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 לה. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, לה 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 לה. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד.
And Sandy Nelson is going to lead us in the blessing for the candles.
I don't have a match. Just a second. I thought I did. I thought I had a match, but I don't.
Okay.
I'll have to go get it. Can you wait a second?
We can wait.
Okay.
We can wait. And meantime, let's just think about the light as something that represents God and spirituality and a hope for a more peaceful time in our world. Okay, the light will come on very soon. If she can find a match. You know, once upon a time when everybody smoked, if you asked somebody for a match, everybody had a match. But now matches are not so common. Shabbat Shalom, Sherry.
Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay.
I opened the matches. It turned out to be staples.
Oh, that's happened to me.
Just a second. You have two lighters. Okay. I light them first, right?
Yep. Remember, you light them first because once you say the blessing, it's Shabbat, and you're not supposed to actually light any fire.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotov v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to kindle the light of Shabbat.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Sandy.
Thanks for being so patient.
Oh, please. Elia is going to lead us in the Kiddush, the blessing over the wine.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, porei peri hagafen. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho b'ahava u'v'ratzon hinchilanu, zikaron le'maseh bereshit. Ki hu yom techila lemikrai kodesh, zecher litziat Mitzrayim. Ki vanu v'acharta, ve'otanu kidashta, mikol hamim, ve'shabbat kodshecha, be'ahava u'v'ratzon, hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh hashabbat. Amen.
L'chaim. Thank you, Elliot. So this Shabbat is called Shabbat Shikhalin. It's the first of 4 special Torah portions leading up to Shabbat Hagadol, the great Sabbath that falls right before Passover. Shekalim is a currency that was used in biblical times. Every male over the age of 20 was required to give half a shekel to maintain the temple in Jerusalem, as per the admonition in the book of Exodus. It's a little like the dues that you pay to belong to a synagogue. The half shekel had to be paid by the 1st of Nisan, the month in which Passover occurs. So to remind people of their obligation, this Torah portion was read in the month of Adar, the month before Nisan. The practice was codified in the Talmud, saying on the 1st of Adar, they give warning of the shekel dues. It's sort of like when you get your little reminder with a statement every month. On the 15th thereof, they read the Megillah, the scroll of Esther, in walled cities and repair the paths and roads and pools of water. The paths and roads had to be repaired after the winter rains in preparation for the Passover pilgrimage to Jerusalem. And the pools of water, the mikvahs, had to be made kosher. So even though the dues technically needed to be paid by the 1st of Nisan, the announcement began in Adar. And as you might say, Adar began a few weeks ago. True, but that was Adar number 1. This year, there is an Adar number 2, which begins next week because we are in a leap year for the Jewish calendar. And now, because this Shabbat, we are talking also about the temple being, the Mikdash, the movable sanctuary being created. We are going to talk about Betzalel, who has a wise heart and a lot of talent, and who's the one who designed the Mikdash, the movable Mishkan, the movable tabernacle.
This is a song I found from written by Alicia Jo Robbins, who is a composer, Torah teacher, a violinist, a very interesting person I found, thank goodness for the internet, who lives in Portland, Oregon. And I got this song from her. It's based on an American folk song. Wise-hearted men, wise-hearted women, bring what you can, silver and linen, wool of crimson and the blue, and the bodies I gave you. Build me a tent that I can dwell in, incense and oil and precious stones. And when you walk, I'll walk beside you, and where you live will be my home. Betzalel. them well. Build me a place to dwell. Melt down your copper mirrors to make a sacred bowl. And every day when you approach me, wash your bodies and your souls. Make me a lamp with 7 branches from a single piece of gold. 7 arms like almond blossoms. In their fire your eyes will glow. Oh, Yav, fill them with love. Make me a place to live. Weave me a cloth with angels' faces, just as fine as thread can sew. And when I see how they surround me, I will know that I am home. Wise-hearted men, wise-hearted women, bring what you can, silver and linen.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I love the fact that Elliot always tries to find a piece that goes with what the Torah portion is and what I'm talking about. So from the song, you can see that what we're talking about this week, our Torah portion, which is called Vayakel, is about the construction of the Mishkan, the portable sanctuary. And that's going to be the model for the temple in Jerusalem. Now, this Torah portion is virtually word for word the same as an earlier one called Truma, which means gift. In Truma, God gave very precise instructions for building the Mishkan. And in this week's portion, the Israelites follow these instructions exactly as God described them. And this is significant because our Torah portion comes right after Ki Tisa, which describes the episode of the golden calf, a big, big sin. By building the Mishkan exactly as God instructed, the Israelites are atoning for their sin with the golden calf. And God is forgiving them and allowing them to construct a place for God's presence to dwell. L'chasi Kaddish.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דברה קירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביום אחד, ובחיי לכל בית ישראל, בגלה בגלה, ובזמן קריב, ויאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך, לעולם ולעלמי עליה, יתברך, יתברך וישתבח, ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר, ויתהלל, ויתהלל, שמי דקודשה בריחו. לאלה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, תמירן בעלמא, ויאמרו Amen.
And the formal beginning of the service, the Baruch Hu.
Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed.
Elliot, a question was asked about where that folk song came from.
The Betzalel song?
Yeah.
Yes, it's written by, and I found it I found the song, and I reached the composer, Alicia Joe Robbins, who's a Torah teacher, composer, violinist in Portland. And I bought the music from her.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. So this is a piece by Ruth Bryn about the building of the tabernacle. It's called They Build the Tabernacle. To devotion, God set no limits, and to dedication of the Spirit, God set no bounds. But great quantities of tribute God did not demand, and the people were restrained from bringing too much gold for the tabernacle. Though the temples of Solomon and Herod were far more costly, it is written that the divine presence was found more constantly in the humbler structure. To dedicate the Spirit to God is more difficult than to give money. To devote the whole heart to the Lord is more difficult than bringing gifts. Not because of the gold on the walls does the light of the sanctuary shine forth, but because of the Spirit within. Those who worship carry away with them more than they bring, for they find there the light to illumine their lives. Ahavat Olam, eternal love that God shows us.
So this is a new Ahavat Olam that I wrote this week for our service. Ahavat Olam, Bet Yisrael, Amecha Torah u'mitzvot chukim u'shpatim atanu lemadata al ken Adonai Eloheinu b'shokvenu uv'komenu nasiach b'chukecha ונשמח בדברי תורתך ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו ובהם נגע יומם
Nice. Thank you for writing it. It's for us. So yes, the Shema is next. The statement that God is one, we are all one.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu
Carol Lee, will you lead us in the Ve'ahavta, please?
Yes, everybody chant with me. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'chol nafshecha u'chol ma'otecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ela asher anochi metzavcha hayom al levavecha V'shinantam levanecha, v'dibarta bam, v'shiftecha v'beitecha, uvlechtecha v'derech, uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha, uv'kshartam leod al yadecha, v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha. Uchtav tam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha laman tizkaru va'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'tem kadoshim le'elohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher Hotzeti echem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem Elohim ani Adonai Elohechem.
Thank you, Carol Lee.
My pleasure, really.
So as you heard in the song, the folk song that Elliot sang earlier, the person who was chosen to design and build the Mishkan is a fellow named Betzalel. Why him? Apparently, when he was only 13 years old, this is, of course, according to a midrash, it's not in the Torah, but when he was 13, he was recognized as a great artist. Also, his name means in the shadow of God. The Talmud tells us there was a deeper reason, however, and it relates to his grandfather. As Rabbi Mel Gottlieb explains, Betzalel is identified in his lineage as the grandson of Hur. And that's pretty unusual to mention the grandfather. So according to the Talmud, Hur stood up to the group of people who built the golden calf, and as a result was murdered by the mob. One would think that Betzalel would resent these people, carrying out revenge against them. But by building the sanctuary, he demonstrated the extraordinary capacity for forgiveness. And how was he able to do this? As Rabbi Gottlieb says, he utilized the great capacity inherent in each of us to overcome our instincts and fears. Even though revenge is a person's only comfort for anger towards one who has wronged him or her, we're also endowed with the capacity to meet that challenge. Betzalel inherited the love of his brothers and sisters possessed by Hur, his grandfather, the love that compelled him to risk his life trying to stop them from sinning. The capacity to overcome taking revenge is precisely the capacity necessary to bring peace and harmony to the world, which we sorely need. Michamocha, the song we sang after we were liberated from slavery in Egypt.
Michamocha ba'lim Adonai, Mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, Nora tehilot osefere, Nora tehilot osefere. Malchutecha ra'u v'necha, B'kei alayam lifnei Moshe. Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed, le'olam
So Zohar Atkins explains what the building of the Mishkan seeks to accomplish. He writes, the Midrash suggests that the building of the Mishkan completes a process of healing and repair. God's original intent was to dwell amongst mortals. Disappointed by our moral failures, God was driven away. Each time we erred, God decided it would be safer to remain far away in the upper reaches of heaven that have nothing to do with us. The highest heavens are not God's home by choice, but by necessity, God's getaway, so to speak. God's mystery is better understood as God's tragic aloofness. God, as it were, would prefer not to be distant. For the Midrash, the Mishkan completes a process initiated by Abraham of luring God to return to earth, to risk vulnerability a second time, to trust humanity even after trust has been breached. It's a constriction that offers God a place to focus, to move forward, to heal. We can imagine God's original banishment from the world, even if self-imposed, as a terrible burden. But the lesson of God's hiding demonstrated by the Mishkan is that we must find ways to coax God out of hiding. Will it always work? No. Will it at times feel foolish? Yes. Should we be uncritical? No. The Torah tells us it is possible to make a home in our lives for the divine. It doesn't say it will feel good, easy, or comfortable. Why does it matter so much that the God of the Torah wants relationship with us? That God in Heschel's words, is in search of man. To me, the lesson is that godliness is to be found most acutely and meaningfully in relationship itself. The Torah aims at encounter, not knowledge. The Mishkan is a beginning, a re-beginning, not an end. V'shamru, we observe Shabbat, and that's a gift from God.
This Vishamru is from South African tradition. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם, ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם ועד. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי שבת וינפש.
Lovely, lovely. We continue with the tefillah, the standing prayer, the central prayer of our service.
Adonai שפתי תפתח ופי יגיד תהילתך. Eternal God, open my lips that my mouth may declare your glory. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Leah, ve'Elohei Rachel, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor ve'Hanora, Elyon, גומל חסדים טובים וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע. מרחקי חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישוע, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום להלוך הסלע. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
Let's take a moment to pray silently. Shalom Rav.
Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Le'olam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim מלך אדון לכל השלום, כי אתה הוא מלך אדון לכל השלום, וטוב בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל ובכל שעה בשלומך. ברוך אתה אדוני עושה השלום.
And speaking of peace, I would like to read a prayer for Ukraine by Joanne Fink. Holy One, source of strength, war has begun and innocent people are dying. We ask your protection for Ukraine and its citizens. We pray for their safety and the security of the country. May this terrible war be diffused swiftly with minimal casualties. May Hungary, Poland, and other neighboring countries be moved to open their borders and provide safe passage for all those who wish to evacuate. Bless our world leaders with the ability to work together for the greater good and the wisdom to make wise decisions during this turbulent time. Bless the people of all nations with the desire, strength, and courage to create a world based on justice and filled with peace. We seek the comfort of believing that everything will be all right, yet it is hard to hold on to hope in the face of insurmountable odds. May the words of Isaiah, "Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore," become true in our day, in this very hour. Source of goodness, shine your healing light on us and those in the Ukraine we hold in our hearts. Shelter us, shield us, show us the path to peace. And as we pray for those in Ukraine who are suffering, we also pray for people in our own congregation and friends and family of congregants. Jonathan Davidson, Ben Henderson, Kara Gilman, Rabbi Steve Robbins, Gloria Mangus, Steve Lux, Leslie Ferris, Pamela Mangus, Johnny Sikat, Larry Miller, Martha Miller, Judy Richmond, Fernando Guerrero, Zach Frankenberg, Lita Mintz, Elaine Thompson. If you'd like to add a name in the chat, please do so, or unmute and please share a name.
My son-in-law, Andy Vellis, has COVID, but he's doing okay.
Glad to hear that. Ruth, Sandra, and Jess Landis, Ron Jones and Ron Brazil, Eleanor Gailey, Diana Anderson, Alicia Harada, Les Hughes, Sheila Winston, Joan Bertoli, Jackson Griffin, Lauren Woodruff, Jeff Oppenheim, Babette Cooper. Any others? Ivan Brandler. Please join us in the Misha Baroth, the prayer for healing.
May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Yisheverach imotenu mekol habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shelema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
So as we've mentioned, in last week's Torah portion, we read about the golden calf episode, when the Israelites created a god out of a molten calf because they were anxious over Moses's tardiness on the mountain. God was so angry that God threatened to destroy the people. It was only through Moses's intervention that the people got spared. Now this week, as I've mentioned, the people are following God's instructions for building the Mishkan, the portable sanctuary, a place in which God can dwell. The instructions are very detailed. And again, as I mentioned, the Israelites follow precisely what God told them to do a few chapters back. It can actually get kind of tedious reading all these details about materials and measurements for 2 Torah portions, this week's and next. And this is a second telling of these details, because just a couple of weeks ago, we read the exact same details in God's instructions to the people. However, I think the reason for this is that building the Mishkan now, after the golden calf, serves 2 purposes. For one, God has forgiven the people, finally, and the construction step by step, according to God's plans, is a way for the Israelites to make atonement. As Aaron Smukler suggests in reading a commentary from the Hasidic master, the Sfat Emet, the relationship between God and the Jewish people, so new and precarious, even without this drama, suffered a tremendous rupture in its wake. But it was not God who needed coaxing back into the relationship, says the Sfat Emet. It was the people of Israel. Though God never ceased to love them, even in the face of a grave sin, they ceased to believe that they could be loved. This is, of course, different from what Rabbi Gottlieb said. Rabbi Gottlieb said that we have to coax God back, but here the idea is that we have to be coaxed back into believing that we are worthy. Because after the sin, a deep feeling of unworthiness was the lasting effect of their initial betrayal. In a counterintuitive yet empirically effective move, the divine addresses the people's sense of their inadequacy by inviting them through Moses to experience their adequacy. And it does through a call to service in the Mishkan. God says, give of yourself, Open yourself to something larger than yourself. Be a nadiv lev. Offer your heart generously to someone else or something else. Give out love, and you will find within yourself a new way to receive love. Because sometimes by giving love and being generous, we get a sense of our being lovable. And as the Israelites follow all the ins and outs of the construction, they can also meditate on their actions and promise themselves to do better. Having something concrete to do exactly as God has commanded can help them focus their minds on this important moment of teshuvah, of repentance. One of God's instructions in particular is a means for these people to achieve not only repentance and forgiveness, but holiness too. God tells the Israelites to count the furnishings of the Mishkan, which is actually surprising since the Israelites are warned in several places not to count. They suffered a plague, for example, because they counted the people during the time of Joshua. And the Talmud tells us that blessing is never found in that which is counted. Why? Because it can lead to greediness and acquisitiveness. Indeed, Moses has to tell the people to stop giving things at a certain point because, as Zohar Atkins suggests, generosity is needed to underwrite a beautiful space, but at a certain point of excess, the temple becomes an idol, a gaudy testament to human ostentation, a pointer that points to itself instead of a home that opens up to mystery. We need decorum to mark certain times and certain places as elevated, but too much stuff crowds out the holy. But as the mystical interpretation of the Bible, the Zohar explains, there is a different kind of counting. And here Rabbi Mel Gottlieb explains that this kind of counting stems from the side of holiness. It is a sacred counting and blessing resides in it. And this counting is counting with a recognition that all is a gift from the divine. And thus there is great appreciation of the abundance manifest in our midst. Gratitude is often what leads to compassion for others, as well as awe at the wonder of the universe. Remember too that the Mishkan is supposed to be a reflection of the world's creation. The vessels and draperies are supposed to represent different parts of the universe, according to the rabbis. So, as Rabbi Gottlieb points out, if one is mindful that it is God's world that we are building, the Shekhinah, God's presence, will constantly be with us. The Mishkan represents the holy presence dwelling in our midst as we engage in the work of the world. This counting restores the link with the divine. But if counting is done only for your private ends and individual greed, this severs the link to the divine. When we dwell in a mentality of counting, it leads to wanting more. It is never enough. And we inevitably forget the source of our blessing, the Holy One. The other important reason for our being steeped in the details of the Mishkan's construction is that this building project is all this work brings this people together as one. Each one of them contributes in one way or another, and they do it as a united people. Again, the Safad Emet, the Hasidic master, considers the moment of the building of the sanctuary as the spiritual apex of the Exodus story. Remember, we're still in the book of Exodus, after the people have been liberated from Egypt, and they've just received the Torah at Mount Sinai. They then sin with the golden calf, but now the people come together as one to give generously of both their wealth and their skill to build the sanctuary for God. Rabbi Michael Strasfeld points out that in this week's Torah portion, which is called Vayakel, which means, and they gathered, Moses gathered all the people to participate in the project. In contrast, last week, the same verb, Vayakel, is used to describe the people coming together to demand the building of the golden calf. The Midrash says that the people first approached Hur, Miriam's son, and when he refused, the mob killed him. After that, faced with an offer they couldn't refuse, Aaron agreed to create the golden calf. He didn't want to get killed too. Dozens of times in this week's Torah portion, we encounter the Hebrew word for the collective, kol, which includes whole, everyone, all. So for example, Moses said to all the community of Israelites, let all among you, gold objects of all kinds, everyone who had in his possession. The commentators understand the repetition of the word kol to emphasize the importance of including everyone in the process of building the Mishkan. In order for the Mishkan to fulfill its purpose, it must be the product of work by a collective without excluding anyone. The importance of gender inclusivity and equality is rare in the Bible, but it appears here. Men and women, all whose heart moved them. Further in the Torah, the building of the sanctuary is connected to Shabbat. Why? Rabbi Strassfeld explains because Shabbat is about oneness. Like the experience of building the Mishkan, on Shabbat, we are to build a sanctuary in time, to use Abraham Joshua Heschel's phrase. We renounce our mastery of the world, and we slow down and we listen. Vayakel, we gather all the pieces of ourselves. We gather with friends and with family. We gather with a community of study and prayer to find the treasure of oneness that lies beneath our feet. And if only the world could experience that oneness, we would not be in the situation we are today. We can only hope that that will be our future. So a few announcements. There's a lot going on right now. Tomorrow, Joshua Garraway, who's a rabbi and a professor at Hebrew Union College, is going to be speaking about how we can repair the world. How relevant right now. That's at 9 o'clock in the morning. And if you need the link, please email me and I'll send it to you, but I've sent it out to people. We are considering actually starting to be back in person next Friday rather than waiting until the 11th. The positivity numbers are really going down. We're, I think, at about 8% right now. So by next Friday, we might be actually down to 5 or less, which is really the threshold for gathering back in person. And I think the little kiddos who are in the family service would really like to be back in person. Our religious school is going to be back in person starting this Sunday outside. So I hope that we can see some of you in person next week. And hang on, Sandy, I've got a bunch of other things to mention. Now on March 18th, we're going to have a joint service with Emmanuel. It's going to be here at the temple. It'll be at 6 o'clock because it's a celebration of Purim. So we're going to have a service and then we're going to have a Purim spiel. That's a joint venture between their congregation and ours. The weekend before, there's going to be a Purim carnival at Temple Emmanuel for the religious school and the kids. So hopefully your kids will join in as well. March 25th, we actually have a service with Raymond Zachary, who was here once before. And he is going to bring Mostly Kosher, a group that played at our Jewish Culture Festival, which we had a few years ago in our parking lot. So it's going to be a real musical service. It's going to be in person, let us hope. And we really encourage people to show up in person. In terms of adult ed, on March 17th, Marcia Falk, who has been here before as well, who is a liturgist and a poet, is going to be speaking about her new Haggadah. She just wrote a new Haggadah, which is very different from the ones that we all know and love. And so really encourage people to come to that as well. And by the way, this Sunday at 2 o'clock, Rabbi Lotker and Rabbi Koch and myself will be talking about why we decided to become rabbis. We're all second career rabbis. Rabbi Lotker was a physicist. Rabbi Koch was a lawyer. And I was a TV producer. So why did we decide to become rabbis in the middle of our adulthood? So hopefully you'll be coming to that. Anyway, there's lots of stuff going on, lots of adult ed, lots of Torah study. Really encourage you to come. And then, of course, in April, we're going to have our second night Seder, community Seder. It's going to be outdoors starting at 4 o'clock. And we've sent out an announcement about that. So please sign up for it and join us. Okay, Sandy, you have an announcement?
No, I just wanted to ask,
Go ahead.
next week is it 7:30 or 6:30?
6:30.
I
It's a
think
family
in the-
service.
I think it said 7:30 in the Wednesday thing.
Okay, let me check on that. That is a mistake. I will check on it and have a correction sent out. Thank you, Sandy. Okay, any other
Yeah,
announcement?
what was the date of Marsha Balk's coming?
March 17th.
Thank you.
It'll be at 6 o'clock. It's going to be just on Zoom. She was going to come in person, but she's feeling uncomfortable about traveling right now. So we're just going to do it on Zoom. And she said she's really worked it out so that it works really well on Zoom because she can share her screen and share pages from her Haggadah. And so, yeah.
That's St. Patrick's Day,
Oh, well,
March
you
17th.
have to wear green.
Yes.
I actually wrote a review of her Haggadah that's going to be in the CCAR journal that's coming out hopefully soon, hopefully before Passover. Are there other announcements? Looking around. No, nobody else. Okay. So let's just hope that COVID is on the wane and there are no new variants that are going to put us back inside, right? Enough already of this. It's been 2 years. So, and let's hope that we can have peace in Ukraine. I mean, I don't know what Putin's doing. Anyhow, all right, let's continue with the Aleinu. And by the way, before we do that, Shaya, thank you so much for your incredible tech. You've done a fabulous job tonight, as always. And thank you, Elliot, for your beautiful music and all the original compositions and other pieces that you found. It's always nice to have this variety.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסר הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגובה מרומים. הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום, והשבת אל לבבך. כי אדוני הוא האלוהים, בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
And we take a moment now to think of those who are no longer with us. May their memories be for a blessing. Our condolences to Elise Hayton on the passing of her brother, Everett Allen Kaplan. We're observing Shloshim for Dr. Ina C. Katz, sister-in-law of Gerald Katz, Sharon Zorn Katz, Rosalie Silverglade Anderson, and Jim Anderson. Is anyone else in Shiva Shloshim or the first year of mourning? Edith Tanazaki, first year. Feel free to unmute too if you'd like to share a name. First year, Willie Davis, Reverend Evans. First 30 days, David Brenner. Pauline Gearling's first year. Stan Walkman and Joanne Heslin, first year. Christine says the world has lost Paul Farmer, founder of Partners in Health and a generous soul and scholar. First year, Elaine Burke. First year, Zell Walton. I'm sorry,
Jeff Simons.
Jeff Simons. We're in Shloshim, I think, for Jeff. And we're observing yard sites this Shabbat for Elmer Koploff, Winston, Simon Kopel, Victor Spitalnik, Raymond Meckler, Helen Creedberg, Helen Carton, Gary Irk, Samuel Zoller, Shirley Lux, Beth Lynn Sklar, Styra Sokolowitz, Diane Kraft Winston, Lillian Gershon, Arnold Neiman, Charlotte Maxman, Roy Berkman, Nathan Bauman. Is anyone else observing a yard site this Shabbat? Okay, please feel free to unmute and to join me in the mourner's Kaddish. Yikadal, Ve'amad Yivrach Yimutei, Ve'amlich Malchutei, V'chayachon V'yomechon, Hayeh Hol Beit Yisrael, V'agala Yisrael Karim.
Amen.
Hey Shemei Rabba, Barak v'ishtabach v'ta'ar v'naseh, Tadar v'talevi Le'ela min kol bilchata v'shirata v'ushbachata v'nechmata Amiran be'alma Hey Shlama Rabba Haim Aleinu Amen.
Amen.
Ose Shalom
Shalom.
Ya'aseh Shalom
Ya'aseh Shalom.
Aleinu ve'al kol
Yisrael.
Amen.
Amen.
May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved, as together we say.
Amen.
And our closing song is Buena Semana. Have a good week, and it's a Ladino song. And I'm going to ask people to please mute again.
This song actually is from Morocco, from Tetuan, where some of the Sephardic Jews went after 1492. And you can see the words there. Buena semana nos del Dio, 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 buena semana. A mis hijos bien decir, a mis hijos bien decir, que me los deje yo vivir, buena semana. Que me los deje yo vivir, buena semana. Para fada y circuncir, para fada y circuncir, y ponerte felín, buena semana. Y ponerte felín, buena semana. Buena semana. Hamotzi lechem min haaretz, we give thanks to God for bread. Our voices rise in song together as our joyful prayer is said. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen.
You're muted.
Okay, I had to be muted at least once, right? I mean, it's a Zoom service. I wanted to thank Elliot for a wonderful service and Shaya for a great, great job. And Sandy for lighting candles and Carol Lee for leading us in the Ve'ahavta. Shabbat Shalom to everybody. Please feel free to stay on and chat if you'd like to.
Look at what the chat says.
Shabbat